Thank you, Bruce. Thank you for the intro. Yeah, well, after the, let's say, cinematic experience of Bob's session, it's my turn to basically guide you through the SCOMathon. I'm very excited to be here again, as last year also was not in person. So let's hope for next year probably will be in person. So this session will be about deploying SCOM right the first time. It's basically trying to guide you to, well, go down the right path and save time and frustrations in the long run. Just a little bit about myself. I know a lot of people in the community already seen this slide, but for people who are new or seeing this afterwards streaming, I'm not that good at hiding online, so I added my email address and my Twitter handle. So if you have questions, well, during the session or after the session, feel free to send me a mail or send me a tweet. I will respond as soon as possible. I did try to, well, find my best picture, so I put this on. From a professional standpoint, I'm a managing consultant at Obvious, where we do a lot of projects regarding Azure and monitoring and workplace as well. I'm a cloud and data center management MVP since 2014, which is in cloud and data center management times when dinosaurs were still running through the data centers. So I witnessed the entire well, shift to cloud and everything. And I've put a little picture of my hobby there. I'm trying to basically keep 2 old-timers on the road and then cruise with family and friends and everything. That's probably between 3 and 5 a.m. when I still have the time. For people who already seen one of my sessions, well, I always start with my motto: it's doing common things uncommonly well that brings success. And it really makes sense today as well, because this session is based on almost 10 years of experience implementing Operations Manager in a variety of environments. So it also comes with a bit of a disclaimer, because every environment is different. And this is based on my own experience. So I'm trying to guide you with my own experience to make sure that you implement SCOM the right way. Slack is in the background still available for questions. If you have questions or if you have something to bring to the table during the session, feel free to, break in. You need to raise your hand and then someone will give you the floor. If I can't answer the question during the session, I will be happy to stay after the session or during a Q&A to answer the question. I really like to have it, well, interactive. In person, it's always a little bit easier, but still, if you have a question, please feel free to ask. There are no stupid questions, only stupid answers. So, well, the joke is on me if I give a stupid answer. So the agenda for today is quite simple. First, we're going to look at the most common mistakes. I made them myself as well in the beginning and still make some of them today due to pressure or time constraints or whatever. Then we're going to define the right way. We're going to define the right way of handling management packs, because that's one of the key things where a lot of people are actually, well, complaining about, or where a lot of people are going down the wrong path. Then we're going to wrap up things. And of course, we have some key takeaways at the end with a Q&A as well. So basically, the goal is going from the left guy, where we've all been when we install Ops Manager, to the right guy. It's, well, it has been a journey, those 10 years of installing and implementing SCOM. Every environment is different. So it's just so much more than just following Microsoft Docs and installing something. It's bringing something to the table. You as an operations manager, a consultant, or an architect, or even someone who's doing operations in Operations Manager, you need to be up par to make sure that everything is running smoothly. Because one of the main things that a lot of people are forgetting is that it's not just monitoring, it's one of the business services. And monitoring is getting important when things are going, let's say, haywire, and you didn't notice it during monitoring. At that point, monitoring becomes important, but you're in, let's say, a bit of a discussion phase. So first, the most common mistakes. I made a list, but feel free in Slack or in chat or whatever to add more if I forgot some. It's always nice to learn from the audience as well. So in random order, first of all, rushing things. I can't stress this enough. If you sell a project, or if you feel that the time you were given is not enough to, completely implement the project according to guidelines, try to gain more time, or just, not try to walk away, but tell people that it's probably not going to work in that time frame. If you're going to rush things just to stay within time, you're going to cut corners, and cutting corners in Ops Manager is not a good idea. Install the platform and then dump all the management packs in. We've been there before. I've been there before. If at one point you come across an environment which is probably set up according to the right practices with following Microsoft Docs, which is probably not that hard for everyone to do, and then just dumping in all the management packs, at one point you will actually start firefighting instead of controlling the environment. If you're in a firefighting phase, you will never win, because there will always be another fire igniting, or that's the thing. You need to make sure that what the end goal is. Meaning, if you start an Ops Manager environment, you need to make sure that you know what the end goal is, where you want to go with the monitoring, and it's not a set it and forget it tool. A lot of people are thinking that it's a set and forget tool, but that's not the case. The fifth one, not knowing the environment where SCOM is installed. If you install SCOM, every environment is different. If you don't have a clue what's in the environment, what are the money makers, what are the distributed applications or whatsoever, or if you need to make connections to external tools, you will have issues down the road. So make sure that you know the environment where SCOM is installed. Not talking to the key stakeholders. Monitoring in general is touching so many things, from business services to servers to whatever. So you need to make sure that the key stakeholders are on par or on board before moving forward. Not properly dimensioning the environment, will be on that later, but it will all come down to the fact that if you don't properly size your environment, you will have issues. Probably you can solve them afterwards, but still it will take so much more time down the road in the project that you don't want to go there. Forgetting the failover capabilities in Operations Manager. There are so many failover capabilities between management servers, between gateway servers, on agents. But if at one point one gateway server is patched and is going down, and you get a flood of machine downs while they're not down, and people start escalating at 3 a.m., probably that's not a good way of starting a discussion or your day. So not taking backups of the key components of SCOM makes sense when you wrap up the project, that you implement the supporting services, meaning backup and the key components of SCOM. And last but not least, no proper expectation management. To come back, that's really the key of the stakeholders. If you tell them that SCOM will rule the world in 5 days, and it will monitor everything and it will all go smooth, after 5 days, you will probably be in a boardroom or meeting room explaining otherwise, which is not a good way of explaining or a good position to be in. So let's place them in a bit of a category so we can tackle them. There are basically three main phases in a SCOM project. It's before you start, it's after the installation itself, and then finalizing the project. So before you start, not knowing the environment, not knowing what the end goal is, not talking to the key stakeholders. So I'm not going to go over all of them. But if you don't pinpoint or don't take part of these, you will have a scope change in the middle of your project, and it will go haywire because you need to redesign something. You need to add a gateway service because someone apparently has an Active Directory where there's no two-way trust, and they weren't aware that it's not an issue, because for another tool it's not an issue. So you need to make sure that you properly dimension and design your environment. After installation, of course, don't rush it. Install the platform and dump all the management packs in there. Don't do that. Start firefighting instead of controlling the environment. No. And then last but not least, in the finalizing, we'll go over these steps as well to finalize and to make sure that you go the right way. So defining the right approach. The right approach is quite simple. There is no 100% right approach, but I always call it like a framework. If you use these steps or small steps in a timely fashion, in my personal experience, a SCOM project is probably going smoothly. But the main thing is that communication is key. So high-level steps to success. First of all, you make your design. Take your time to make your design. Not every SCOM installation is the same. The components remain the same. Management server is a management server. Management packs remain management packs. But you need to make sure that you place the management servers in the right position, that you have gateway servers. My most complex environment had like 3 layers, which had no two-way trust. So I needed to have like 10 gateway servers just with failovers and everything to the Active Directory. So you really need to think things through. Then you need to implement the platform. Again, don't rush anything. You need to implement the platform first, make sure that all the agents are in there, that your management servers are up to par. And then you start configuring, and last but not least, finish up properly. A lot of people I see, and I made that mistake as well, is that you don't finish up properly. The days are spent or whatever. They say, okay, we have a running ops manager, and then suddenly you go away. And after a couple of months, they call you and they say, well, this is rubbish because in the end, there was no training, there was no handover, there was no documentation whatsoever. So design your environment first, check the AD boundaries. A lot of people who are asking operations manager or monitoring in general, they have no clue that the AD boundary is key to for your design. Because if you go outside the two-way trust, you need a gateway server to make sure that those machines which are residing outside of the gateway, outside of the two-way trust, that they are actually monitored as well. Gateway service necessary. The first AD boundaries, well, make it necessary if you go outside the two-way trust. What are the companies or the client's crown jewels? If you're gonna talk about distributed applications, you need to make sure that the distributed applications that are the money makers indeed are properly monitored in operations manager. Monitored, I say, but also the notification needs to be a par on the high level. What is the core business? It's basically the same as the crown jewels. And any other tools you need to take in account lingering around in the environment. There is almost no environment where there's only one operations manager or one monitoring tool to rule them all. There's always like an ELK, or there's always like a networking tool or a small tool that they develop themselves. So go into discussion with these people just to make sure that they are fully aware what you're going to do and whether you're going to, let's say, replace the tool or at least extend the tool or try to communicate or work together. So design first, implement second, install all the management servers and the gateway servers. You can easily follow Microsoft Docs, but if you've done it a couple of times, it's a piece of cake, to be honest. But make sure that you install the latest version. Dimension the DBase correctly regarding size. Also, if you have the latest version, it's not only from 2019, but it's also, let's say, the according update rollup pack you need to install as well. Let's see. Install all the agents. If you install all the agents, make sure that they're all green, that they're communicating. And as long as you don't have the management packs already packed in, let's say, the environment, the agents will not, well, start running around or spewing alerts. So take this time to actually cleanly and easily install your environment and make sure that your base environment itself is properly installed. Use the latest versions and make sure all the agents are in the environment. And then implement and test failover of the agents in a management server or gateway. This is the ideal time to actually check whether the failover is working because you're not actually monitoring this. The moment you're monitoring and people are seeing or looking into the dashboard, it's a different story, because then they see alerts and they will ask questions when you are testing the failover. So this is the right time to test the failovers and the alerts as well. So the first things first, we need to configure the environment. A couple of rules where I always try to keep people, because I'm also overseeing some of the SCOM projects I have now as a bit of an architect. Rule first is start small. There's no point in trying to tackle everything. There's no point in, let's say, trying to take over the world in one day. We all know the Ren and Stimpy comics, which is one of my favorite, by the way. Rule 2 is keep asking questions. If you have a question, that's not only during this session, but if you have a question where you're on a crossroad and you need to decide whether to go left or right, always try to find someone who can, well, take that decision together with you. If you make a decision to go left, but the company wanted to go right, from time to time, it's very hard to actually go back down the route and take the right exit, because you already made some decisions based on your decision. Rule 3, and that's some of the things which, well, I learned the hard way: never believe documentation. Documentation is, well, documentation is fun, but documentation most of the times is not actual. It's not kept, well, actual, and documentation is, well, varies in quality as well. And then rule 4, test, test, and test. Make sure that if you implement something, that you test it. Another thing here regarding the documentation, always when someone asks for an override, make sure that you have something on mail, or that you have like a centralized system. I personally had a couple of encounters where 6 months later, people were barging into my office asking why didn't I see an alert, because, well, fabrication was stopped or halted due to one of the DBases filling up. And then 6 months earlier, there was like a guy asking me to, well, disable the monitoring of that DBase because it was annoying. So always make sure that you have proper documentation, and never believe the documentation which is there. Use it as a guideline, but don't go 100% on that documentation. So rule number 1, start small, categorize, and don't dive into everything at once. People will have to get used to the new way of monitoring, which is, well, you will get some resistance, because there's people who decided for Ops Manager, but there's probably also people who are using other tools and want to stick to those tools because they believe they are better. And from time to time, it's quite possible that one tool is better in a specific area of monitoring than Ops Manager, but still, they need to get used to the new way of monitoring, and there will be resistance. But involve the right people and stakeholders. This is coming back during my session a lot of times, because I'm seeing that a lot of people, they're sitting on their island, they're implementing Ops Manager, then they go in and they, well, present what they've built, and then suddenly it's not what the customer is wanting, and then you need to go back and try to fix it ASAP, which is, well, a recipe for disaster, because you have a time constraint. Again, keep asking questions, explain what you're trying to do with Ops Manager, keep your eye on the defined end goal, ask the right questions. Again, ask, evaluate, ask, and validate. If you are in doubt, always ask what the threshold needs to be. Take them out of their comfort zone and ask whether that threshold is sufficient based on your experience. You are the person there who is responsible for implementing Ops Manager, you personally or your team. So make sure that everything is validated and evaluated. And then last but not least, communicate. That's something I learned as well. If you communicate about the monitoring and people are getting annoyed that you communicate so much, then you're doing a good job. Rule 3, never believe documentation. I mentioned before, one of the famous quotes I got is, yes, we have this fully documented, we will have this delivered by the end of the day. The end of the day will never come. You will never get that document. It's all in the document, right? Meaning if you ask questions and they say, well, it's all in the document, challenge them. Where is it in the document? The things you are asking, we already know. Probably they already know, but you're not asking the right questions. Find everything you need firsthand. And last but not least, challenge everything to make sure that you are, well, in control. Rule 4, test, and then test what you've been testing. Make sure that you test the alert rollup, that you have all the components tested, and best or worst health rollup model. In the beginning, when I started Ops Manager, this was kind of obscure for me, but the best or worst health rollup model really makes sense. And it's a bit of, let's say, an example I give all the time. If, for example, your company has a web shop and the web shop is running, but one of the web servers is crashing. It can happen, but you have 4 web servers taking the load. If you have a monitor which has the worst health rollup and that one server is crashing, all bells will go off. People will be called during the night at 3 a.m. while the website is still running on 3 servers instead of 4. If you have the best rollup, your website will still be available, even if one web server is up and running, but probably the user experience is degraded. But that's the key where you need to put your monitoring, whether you want to have availability monitoring or user acceptance monitoring. So the best and worst health rollup model, that's one of the things. If you're new with SCOM, look into that because it can make a huge difference in notifying people. And then last but not least, that's something that I learned in the Ops Manager community as well. Test things. Waiting for it to happen is not testing, because if at one point they have an outage or a planned outage or whatsoever, always ask whether you can test your monitoring, whether it's possible to stop a service and see what happens on a test machine or whatsoever. But you need to make sure that you test your monitoring as much as possible before it's waiting to happen, because, well, if you're not sure that your monitoring is correct, you will probably, have a big chance of not seeing the alert. So one of the key things is, if we implemented everything, our operations manager environment is working, we need to go into management packs. Management packs can be scary in the beginning for a lot of people because they are so vast and there are a lot of things coming in. Again, if at one point we use all the management packs because we have a list that we need to monitor DNS, that we need to monitor Active Directory, that we need to monitor all this and this and this business service, and we dump all the management packs in, because it's quite easy in 2019 just to select all the management packs, dump them in, even don't download the management pack guides or anything, just go in, put all the management packs in there with the default parameters. You will have so many alerts, and it will be very hard to actually start pinpointing what is the desired level of monitoring. So every management pack I see as a small project with its own stakeholders and specific approaches. You need to get people into a room and say, okay, what do you want to monitor? The first question they ask back is, what can we monitor? What can you bring to us? And then you need to go over the management pack and say, hey, these are the things I can do for you. Every management pack has the management pack guide, and it's a treasure of information. There are some management packs who are really, really big in numbers, in pages, but there are, well, maybe 8 or 10 significant pages. More on that later. Every management pack is different and needs tuning, even when there's a new version of a management pack, and that's something I found out the hard way. Even if there's a new version of the management pack, you need to look into the management pack guide and see whether you need to tune stuff. From time to time, due to customer feedback, some monitors are turned off by default in the next version of a management pack. But if you are using that monitor, for example, you will not get an alert saying that monitor has been automatically overwritten to not be active. So look into the management pack before you do updates. And every management pack will not be set it and forget it, to be honest. Every management pack, as I mentioned, has a unique set of monitors, rules, discoveries, and everything is in there. It's a huge toolkit, but you need to take the tools out of the kit to build your own operations manager environment. So management pack guide, what I always do is my first go-to section is what's new. From time to time, it's not a big deal, but sometimes they, like I mentioned before, disable a management pack or disable a monitor in a management pack. So always check what's new. Then check whether this management pack needs additional config or users. Some of the management packs, for example, Exchange or whatsoever, they need specific users. They need specific configuration. Some management packs need to have some small exe file on a server or anything to run checks or anything. So make sure that you have all these in place before you move forward. Management pack guide has a full list of monitors and rules included with the default parameters. Use this list to present to the stakeholders, meaning I also have like, let's say, scripts where I can pull a list of everything, but it's in the management pack. So go over them and say, okay, this is the default parameter. Is this correct for you? Or do you want to have a higher or a lower one? You can always change that afterwards, but if you do it the first time when you install the management pack, you're already, let's say, 70 or 80% there. So management packs, if we look into them, I always divide them into 3 categories. First of all, we have the base, and the base is, in fact, all the management packs for your basic availability of your server environment. Well, it's not server environment anymore, but you catch my drift. It's the Windows Core OS, it's hardware manufacturer MP, it's network MP. So these are all the things you need to do first. First, get your base in order. That also includes the monitoring or the different monitoring levels in operations management themselves. Get the base first, and then the second one will be the services. What are the services? In my belief, the services management packs are the monitoring of your business services. Those are most of the time sealed management packs supplied by vendors or Microsoft, for example, DNS, DHCP, Active Directory, Hyper-V, but also other management packs which you buy, for example, to monitor Oracle, for example. Those management packs are called services management packs, and you can already see that these management packs are also sub-projects. So take your time, and when I make an estimate for Ops Manager environment or just an environment I need to install, I always make a breakdown of all the management packs or the services they need, and I put a couple of days on there. Otherwise, you will have one big bag of days, well, implementing management packs, 10, 15 days or whatsoever. But then it will be difficult to actually tell them which management pack takes more time. In my personal experience, for example, a SQL management pack will take so much more time than DNS or DHCP. And you need to actually confront them that it takes more time. And last but not least, the custom management packs. Well, the name says itself, is a little bit of self-explanatory. You have the custom management packs. They are custom-made management packs specific for the environment. If you are doing an upgrade or whether there already was Ops Manager involved, there will be some custom-made management packs. They are unsealed and probably unique for the environment. And the examples are override management packs in-house with an application monitoring, but also downloaded or changed community management packs. There are a lot of great community management packs out there, but they are unsealed or sometimes sealed, but they are not, let's say, supported by Microsoft. They're supported by the community. So always use them with a bit of a caution. I see a chat box popping up. Let's see. Lots of recognition. Okay, thank you, Niels. Let's see whether I can close this again. There we go. Yeah, I'm not that familiar with Zoom, so bear with me just a sec. So these are, let's say, the levels, and you see the base is, well, it takes the most time. Then you have the services, and custom takes less. The level of base services is higher, but the work increases from the bottom to the top. You have more work in the custom ones than in the base and the services. So make sure that you put this in your breakdown of hours or whatsoever, that the base and the services will take less work than the custom, and custom always comes last. So make sure that you have enough time contributed to the custom ones. So the right approach with management packs. First of all, you make a list of management packs. So you make a full list of the management packs you are going to implement. Again, use these three categories: the base management packs, the services, and the custom. And if you do this, the base management packs will always be the same. You will have Windows running around, you will have Linux running around, you will have probably HP or Dell hardware with their own management pack. So the base is quite simple in every environment. That's not where the customization or the magic or whatsoever hangs. The services is quite easy, because the services, in fact, will give you the opportunity to list all the business services, whether it's Active Directory, DHCP, or whatever. All the business services are, in fact, sub-projects with their attributed days that are necessary. And one of the key things here is the fact that you can't just set it and forget it. You need to come back to them. You need to come back and say, okay, we implemented this, but I'm still seeing so many alerts. You still need this alert, or do I need to tune the threshold? And from time to time, they're saying, I don't need that alert anymore, but get that on mail or somewhere else, written in stone, carved in stone, whatever. But get that in mail, because every decision you make in the operations manager environment concerning an override can have a huge impact in the back end, not in a couple of weeks, but maybe in a couple of months or even a year. During that specific incident, when they were dancing around, not in a happy way, in my office, production was lost due to the fact that that DBase was filled up. And it filled up every, let's say, day for 30K or something. And it was always above threshold, but it did a clean job. But of course, 30K were lost. And at the end, it was a mayhem. So read the management pack guides. Every management pack which is written by the operations manager team, or is sold or anything, has a management pack guide. If you're only working in the console, please make sure that you're not tempted to just dump the management pack in there, meaning download management pack, the management pack, or import management pack, because the management pack will be automatically imported without you checking what's in there. So the monitoring will just start working. Some of the management packs use an approach of everything's off and you need to implement it. And some of the management packs are going vice versa, meaning everything is on and you need to down tune what you need. Both, let's say, have their own merits, and both have their own, let's say, pros or cons. But in the end, it's you who needs to make the layer on top, which is for you or your customer reliant or is beneficial to actually use that. So implement the management packs, then get the stakeholders involved for the specific management pack. I can't stress this enough. You need to have like a small management team or a small project team specifically for those. Specifically for SQL, for example, you can probably know a lot about SQL. I learned the hard way a lot of the things about SQL, but the DBA is the guy who's responsible for running everything and keeping everything up and running. And he needs to define when he wants to be alerted, when things are going haywire, something. Implement the first set of overrides. Evaluate after a week. That's one of the things I can give you as well. If you implemented the first set of overrides, after the last meeting you have with the stakeholders, make sure that at that meeting you put up a new placeholder in the calendar of all the stakeholders to discuss the alerts and discuss the monitoring which happened. So at the end of the meeting, always schedule a new meeting. That's just a tip I'm giving you, not only with operations manager, but if you don't do that, everybody is very busy. the evaluation will just not happen. But it's quite important that you do the evaluation, because then you can adapt and you can start all over again. So that's the right approach with management packs. And in a project, management packs are often the key to success or failure, because the management packs hold your configuration. It's the only way, or almost the only way, of having things your way in Operations Manager. That's the only, that's the icing on the cake. The cake can be as good, but if the icing is bad, no one will actually buy it or take a piece. So after we have implemented everything, which is, let's say, very important that we implemented everything, that we have implemented the management packs, there are a couple of things that we still need to do. Just seeing how I'm doing on timing's sake. Okay. So things to do after a SCOM project. First of all, document your installation and environments. That document can be easy, but it's something which is easily forgotten. If you document your installation of your environment, most of the time it's the design. I always take my design and then I put the design decisions in there, and that's also the documentation. So for example, if I decided to have 4 management servers, I take that document, and in the documentation, I always say, okay, these are the 4 servers, they're placed there, this is the IP address, this is the version I've installed them, that's fine. After a SCOM project, you need to enable the notifications. Some people do it far more early than I'm doing it, but in the end, when you enable the notifications, whether it's to send a mail, a text, or send it to an external tool, at that point, you will start, let's say, annoying people with the alerts coming out of SCOM. If you do this too early, people will go like, well, SCOM is rubbish because I'm getting so many bogus alerts. I'm not even looking at the alerts anymore. And if that happens, they will just create a rule in Outlook and it will just be dumped somewhere else. And SCOM will be, well, yelling in the empty forest where no one is listening. Don't forget the backups. I can't stress this enough. I have been in several cases where they call me in and say, okay, we had like a crash of the DBase or anything. Can you come and look at your SCOM environment while I didn't touch it for another 3 years or something? And they actually forgot to check the backups. So there are no backups. So at that point, you basically lose your entire config. One of the things which I always do is backup. See in chat. A good point, Bob. So don't forget the backups. Backup your unsealed management packs. If everything is lost, if your entire environment is gone, all the hard work of your management, of your, let's say, specific company wide configuration is in the unsealed management packs. Even if you lose your historical data when your DBase have crashed, even when everything is gone, if you have your unsealed management packs, all your work is not lost. But that's one of the main things. You also need a list of all the installed sealed management packs with their version number. If you have these two, and I always backup them and I store them somewhere else. If you have these two, you can download the sealed management packs with the correct version number, and you can, on top of them, implement the unsealed management packs. And you have your environment back, because you can always rebuild management servers. You can always rebuild a new DBase, and you can add the agents in there. But if you lose the unsealed management packs and you don't have a list of the installed sealed management packs, you will have to start all over again. So DBase backups are important as well, but I always want to have the unsealed management packs and the list of the installed sealed management packs. All the other stuff you can rebuild, But if you lose the unsealed management packs, again, the unsealed management packs, you have nothing and you have to start all over again. And last but not least, and that's why I put it in bold and underlined it as well, make sure that there's someone capable of running it from an operations standpoint. If you are in a company and it's your operations manager, it's not an issue. But if you are a consultant and you strongly believe that the person who's gonna run the operations manager is not capable of doing the job on a day-to-day basis because his lack of interest happens, lack of training happens as well, just lack of experience, whatever. I had people who literally said to me, yeah, my boss came in and said, well, yeah, you're now the SCOM admin. You need to set it up, and you have like 3-4 months. And then I'm just taking this over as a side thing on my regular work. At that point, alarm bells are going off in my head, because the moment you leave the company saying, okay, the contract is done, we have our operations manager, it will not be managed according to best practices. And in the end, in a couple of months, you will get a call back that SCOM is just rubbish, something, and you need to start over all over again. That's a good point. The contract may be done, but monitoring never is. And Henrik says, like, MP file backup is really important. Save them all. The MSIs, docs, ISOs, everything, to be honest. But the last statement is very important. If at one point, and I already did it with a couple of customers, I made disclaimers saying, okay, you need to train him like this, like this, like this. This is the trainings. You need to have a dedicated person for operations manager. And if at one point they say, well, it's just monitoring, make sure that you have it on mail or anything. It's not as covering, but it's just so important that someone who's dealing with operations manager know what he's doing, because the issue is, in fact, it's not a set it and forget it. It's something which is alive, and you need to nourish an operations manager environment, ops manager environment, but you need to make sure that it's maintained, that it's up to par, and that it's constantly evaluated and adapted. If you don't do that for a couple of months, it's probably fine. But if you don't do that for a couple of years, you will have issues, especially when someone is trying to do an in-place upgrade and it fails and you're somewhere in between. So that's one of the key things I can give you. I'm just about finished with my time, so I'm just going to go to the key takeaways, but I already gave hopefully some good tips and key takeaways. So first of all, get a bigger picture before digging in, meaning try to find out before you start a project what the end goal is. What do they want to do? Why did they choose ops manager? Sometimes people tell me I'm evangelizing a bit too much, but I really want to know what they want to do with the tool. If you come in and there's a perception issue that SCOM can do everything, operations manager or SCOM is great in what it does, but it's not, let's say, a network monitoring tool. It's not a hardcore application monitoring tool. It's doing everything up to 85 or 90%, but there are tools who can dedicate their budget, let's say 100% for a small specific niche, and they're probably better in doing that. So make sure that you have expectations management, because it will give you a lot more, let's say, breathing room in the end. Although you have done this before, every environment is different. I learned a couple of ways the hard way. If you go into routine and you just dump your default set of management packs in there, your default set of whatever in there, every environment is different, and people working there are different as well. Involve and communicate with the right people. We are working in ICT. We are touching with operations manager or monitoring in general. We are touching the entire environment. Nobody is untouched in a monitoring project normally. So make sure that you have them all on board, that they know what you're doing there, what you actually want to do. And last but not least, start small. Rome was not built in a day. An operations manager environment is also not built in a day. It's a process. It takes time. It will happen from time to time that there will be false alerts. It will happen that you miss things, but it all comes down to the process you put behind your operations management environment to make sure that it stays up to par, where the real magic happens. Because I've come across a lot of customers where they say, well, operations manager is just not working for us, something. And then you go into dialogue and you change a couple of things and they say, well, hallelujah, it all comes together now. So it all comes down to these small things that you really need to dig in and ask and get through. And that, well, basically concludes my, let's say, I'm passionate about ops manager. I hope you can tell. I'm passionate about ops manager. I'm passionate about helping companies with monitoring and helping also people getting their monitoring up to spec. But it takes time. And for a lot of companies, time is money. I can fully agree. But you need to make sure that you sometimes hit that pause button to make sure that you have a proper knowledge or a proper way of implementing ops manager in your environment. So that leaves me, let's say, 3 minutes over time, which is quite awesome, I think, if you see how many minutes were taken from me from Bob. Thank you, Bob. Joke. But if there are questions, I'm just opening the chat window. According to, let's say, the timeline, and also in the next panel discussion. The panel discussion is maybe not the right time for asking questions regarding this, but the session will be available afterwards. We will have, you can send me a mail, you can connect with me on Twitter, whatever. I'm not that good at hiding online. So basically, you can always find me. If you can, I always tell people, if you can spell my name correctly, you will find me. I mean, that's the thing. So I'm just gonna put the thank you slide on here because I always forgot that. So thank you for the sponsors as well. They're all on here. I'm not gonna mention them all. And we're probably gonna head over to the SCOM Cafe and afterwards to the, the lobby or something. So thank you for listening and hope you have a great extent of the next of your day at the SCOMathon. Bye.